2005 Buick Park Avenue 3.8 liter. Recently, I replaced the upper and lower intake manifold gaskets as well as the valve cover gaskets. This video will highlight the mistakes I made and the problems I ran into along the way, plus a few tips to help me get the project done. At the end, there's a breakdown of the cost. The video is broken down into 5 parts: prep work, disassembly, cleaning, reassembly, and afterthoughts. Part 1. Prep work. Take detailed pictures and video of everything under the hood to use as a reference later when reassembling. I regretted not taking more shots, especially of each bracket's orientation and how the wires were routed. The radiator drain plug was broken off in the radiator. I had to use a screw extractor to get it out. Drilling a hole into the plastic drain plug was easy. I bought a universal drain plug at AutoZone, Dorman part 61136. It's a M16 1.5. Draining the coolant was messy. Even though the path from the drain hole to the pan was unobstructed, coolant still managed to find its way into that metal tray under the radiator. Fluid dripped from numerous areas. I recommend at least 2 drain pans to collect the coolant and an empty pan to swap out with a full one while it's draining. I had to stop wrenching on the car to clean the floor. I laid cardboard down because I was walking in coolant and tracking it everywhere. Have some flattened cardboard boxes on hand. A messy workspace can turn a simple task into a real hassle. Part 2. Disassembly. Silicone spray is ideal for loosening rubber hoses. I had a hard time removing the air intake thingy. Prime with a screwdriver helped, but I got careless and gouged the screen inside the throttle body. Heater hoses are difficult to remove, 30 minutes at least. Silicone spray, picks, pliers, and padding. Spray the joint, pry with a pick, twist the hose to break it free. Careful not to damage the outlets. When removing the hose from the upper intake manifold, you'll notice that the outlet, or snorkel, is really loose. I thought that was because it was old, but even on a new one it still wiggles about. I'm surprised it doesn't cause a vacuum leak. Separating the rubber hose was tricky and stressful because I was worried the snorkel would snap. I tried squeezing the tabs in to remove the snorkel, but I couldn't make it happen. There's a black plastic piece that holds the spark plug wires in place. To remove it, slide it or pull it up. I did it wrong and broke 2 of the 3 tabs off the back. I fought with these fuel injector pigtails for at least an hour. They're very delicate. The little green clips have to be all the way up. When they're all the way up, you could squeeze the button and the harness will release effortlessly. But the green clip has to be all the way up. You'll think it's all the way up, but it won't be. And be warned, these green clips can fly off. It's a miracle I didn't lose any. When putting the green clip back into place, be mindful of its orientation. One side is sloped at a different angle facing out. Use the other wires as a reference. I still managed to put one in upside down. Don't do that. Fiddling with this fragile plastic was extremely stressful. Another trivial thing that ate up a lot of time was this bracket. Removing 2 nuts with a deep socket, piece of cake. But it wasn't. It took over an hour. I almost rounded off the nuts. The bolt is on a weird, sharp angle. Kneeling on the car, reaching down against the firewall is an awkward, painful position to be in. To replace the PCV valve, you need to remove the m.a.p sensor. Push back these plastic tabs. Easy peasy. It comes right out. But putting it back in was a different story. The sensor wouldn't sit flat. I noticed the right tab was cracked. Manhandling, I accidentally broke the left tab completely off. 17-year-old brittle plastic. Luckily, the sensor seemed snug enough to stay put even without the tabs. Maybe. I bought a medium-sized pry bar to aid in the separating of the lower manifold from the cylinder head. Yet the manifold wouldn't budge. Turns out, I missed 2 bolts. Once all 12 bolts were removed, the manifold popped off no problemo. Part 3. Cleaning. I knew the cleaning process was going to be daunting and I was dreading it. Thick kitchen gloves are recommended. I cleaned the plastic parts in the laundry tub with degreaser soap and a scrub brush. The metal parts I used engine degreaser and brake clean. This project requires a lot of rags and paper towels. I covered the exposed engine with a folded t-shirt, then I cut poster board to the exact size of the opening. I laid that down on top of the shirt, then placed notebook paper on top of that. I changed the paper out periodically. My efforts to clean the mating surfaces with the razor blade seemed futile. Still, I gave everything a once-over just how I seen in the how-to videos. This tool made it less likely I'd drop a blade, but also made it more likely I'd gouge the aluminum. Essential to cleaning the valley in the car was a cordless drill with 3 different sized wire wheels, small, medium, and large. I also used a Dremel, though probably not necessary. Air tools would have been ideal. To protect the electrical wires from the wire wheel, I took rectangular pieces of poster board cut to size, folded them over the wires and taped them shut, then bungeed everything out of the way. After using the wire wheel, I went over everything with red then green Scotch-Brite pads. You'll need excellent light when cleaning the engine block. This light bulb does okay, but it always seems to be facing in the wrong direction. I gotta get one of these rechargeable LED chumpies. When cleaning the valve cover surface, I realized that the coil packs were in the way. The 2 bolts that secure the coil pack unit came off super easy, but only after removing the battery. Surprisingly, removing the broken plastic coolant elbows was super easy using a J-hook poker. A bench grinder with the wire wheel was a must. I didn't have one, so I improvised, clamping a drill to the workbench. It worked really well for cleaning everything: bolts, brackets, thermostat housing, etc. My workbench did get damaged, though, from the heat of the drill and the pressure of the clamp. Part 4. Reassembling. Some of these gaskets came as kits with a lot of extra stuff. The upper intake gasket kit came with 12 fuel injector O-rings, 2 EGR gaskets I didn't use, thermostat with the O-ring. I also didn't use the little metal pipe for the lower manifold. I kept the original in. A throttle body gasket, 2 black O-rings I think are for the coolant elbows, and the red O-ring I think is for the PCV valve. Lastly but not least, the upper intake gasket with the tube. The lower intake manifold gasket kit comes with the 4 pieces of the gasket, 2 O-rings I assume are for the coolant elbows. Not sure what the third O-ring is for, maybe the PCV valve. It comes with RTV sealant, but I bought Permatex Ultra Gray, part number 75191, because a YouTuber said it was of a higher quality. The upper manifold kit comes with 12 fuel injector O-rings, 2 little metal pipes, a snorkel with an O-ring, PCV valve with an O-ring and spring, m.a.p sensor plastic holder thing with the O-ring, the intake gasket with the tube, and lastly the upper manifold itself, aka the upper intake plenum, or aka the U-shaped black plastic thing. I bought a 1/4-inch drive torque wrench for $20. I used it incorrectly and it broke. When I was torquing down the lower intake manifold bolts, the wrench wasn't clicking, or rather, the click was very subtle. When torquing a bolt down, don't crank along like you're tightening any old thing. You gotta slowly ease it, listening and feeling for a faint click. It's not like when you're torquing a lug nut and the click is jarring and loud. I wasn't noticing the click, so I thought the wrench was defective. I decided to test it by torquing a bolt that was already tight. I figured I'd try it on a lug nut. I set the wrench to 60 inch-pounds, added adapters to use a large socket, gave the little torque wrench a healthy turn, and snap! Broke the nipple off the wrench. Since the brand new 1/4-inch drive torque wrench was now broken, I used my 1/2-inch drive torque wrench to snug up the lower intake manifold bolts to 7 foot-pounds. White-knuckled, slowly turning the wrench, praying that the bolts don't snap, listening for a click. The next day, I drove back to Harbor Freight, bought a digital torque wrench for $150. Reading the instructions, I learned that I misused the wrench I broke. You're supposed to place your hand near the center of the wrench where you have the least amount of leverage. I was confident that torquing down the upper intake with this new tool was going to be foolproof. Nope, I cracked the upper intake. The black plastic U-shaped thing. The biggest noob mistake ever. I was tightening down the upper intake manifold, torquing each bolt in sequence with my brand new handy-dandy electronic torque wrench, gradually increasing the torque value, inching towards 84 inch-pounds. When disaster struck, the plastic cracked. I had over-tightened it. Or so I thought. Turns out the bolt wasn't seated. It was kind of cross-threaded and wasn't sitting properly. I kept tightening it. Even though it hadn't reached 84 inch-pounds, the manifold cracked. Fortunately, a new one was in stock locally, had to shell out $120, and the fact that the kit came with extra stuff I had already bought separately added insult to injury. When unboxing the new upper intake manifold kit, it dawned on me that I needed an E-socket to tighten down the 3 star-shaped fasteners that hold the throttle body in place. In hindsight, I probably could have just used channel locks. The new upper intake manifold has a different air outlet than the original, a different snorkel. There's an extra port. WTF. I wrapped electrical tape around it to prevent any leakage. Spoiler alert, the tape fell off, but the car runs fine. Installing the belt tensioner bracket was an extreme pain in the ass. The holes would not line up. Try as you might, the holes will not line up. It's because of the elbows. Each elbow has to be pushed in all the way and tilted in a very precise angle. The elbows have to be in the perfect sweet spot for the bolt holes to line up. After 40 minutes of aggravation, I installed the belt tensioner bracket without the elbows, just to see if the holes would line up. Leaning over the car for 60 minutes, EBP, engine bay pain. Padding is a must. You need padding. The purge container. This is going to be a breeze. Snap, snap. And it was. It snapped together, no problem. But I'm an idiot, and I put it in reversed. Disconnecting it was extra stressful because I knew the connectors were on the wrong ends. Could have probably been avoided had my reference photos been more adequate. Part 5, the afterthoughts. I should have labeled the hardware. I wasted a ton of time trying to figure out which bolt or nut went where. In the end, I had 3 extra bolts. Embarrassing. I should have used folded paper or sandwich bags to keep everything organized. I had to buy a bolt for the alternator bracket. After buying multiple packs of metric stuff, I realized I needed SAE. DIY repairs are fun and rewarding. Extremely stressful. I felt under the gun to get this car back together. Seeing random parts of the engine strewn across the workbench was unnerving. I had to utilize every little bit of free time I had whilst hemorrhaging money on parts, supplies, and tools, with no guarantee that the repair would be a success. Repairing a vehicle is physically and mentally taxing. You will be sore from kneeling and walking back and forth. Your shoulders, neck, back, knees, legs, thumbs, fingers, wrists, and forearms will hurt for a week and a half. Here's a breakdown of the money and time spent to complete this repair. Parts were $343. Tools were $224. Cleaning supplies, $56. Fluids were $59. For a grand total of $682. Over the course of 2 weekends and 3 weekdays, I spent a total of 37 hours in the garage, not to mention the multiple trips to the different stores. Thanks for watching the video. I hope this helps someone who's about to dive headfirst into their car's engine bay. Good luck. Also, a big thanks to all the uploaders out there. Without them, I would have never attempted this repair. All right, now go get frustrated.